Good morning, everyone. My name is Mahnoor. I'm the Marketing Communications Manager at xiQ, and I'm pleased to host you today. Thank you for joining our webinar, Learning from the Pros, How is AI Transforming B2B Sales? If this is your first time joining us for our webinar series, Learning from the Pros, I'd like to personally welcome you as well as give you a bit of insight on the series. This webinar is for fellow B2B visionaries, forward thinkers, and those interested in learning about the future of B2B sales and marketing. Today, we've got Lois Mueller, marketing strategist at xiQ, who will be talking to Erik Schmude and Usman Sheikh to discuss how AI is driving a paradigm shift in B2B sales. It's going to be an exciting discussion, and I hope you enjoy and share the insights. I'm going to run through housekeeping before we begin. We'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have a question, please feel free to send it through the Q&A channel at the bottom of your player. We'll be answering your questions at the end of the session. Today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session and is accessible through registering on the website. Lastly, we'd encourage you to share this webinar with your social networks. With that, I'd like to kick things off by handing it over to our moderator. Hi, Lois. Thank you for being here. Please begin.
Hi, thanks so much. Welcome, everyone. As businesses are developing sales strategies for 2021, we wanted to provide a lens into what changes industry leaders are noticing in B2B sales and how businesses should adjust their approach to encompass these changes. To help us garner these insights, we are joined by Erik Schmude, a service sales director at DELL who manages sales teams across their United States market, which spans all of DELL's business verticals. Needless to say, Erik is a veteran, a visionary, and a practitioner whom we are honored to have here today. And of course, joining us will also be Usman Sheikh, who is the founder and CEO of xiQ. Gentlemen, thank you again for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. And Erik, do you want to get us started today by telling our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Erik Schmude. I'm a services sales director at DELL. I've been with DELL for about 21 years now. Held a variety of roles from an inside sales rep selling to our home users to a technical sales rep to a systems consultant in the field. I've managed multiple teams and now lead our commercial services sales organization in the central US. I'm excited to be here.
Great to have you here, Erik. It's our pleasure.
Thanks, Usman.
And so, Erik, we will begin. The first question will be to you. If you want to get us started again, what are some key traits that you've been noticing for today's B2B buyer?
Boy, I can tell you there's quite a few. I think that if I was to, I like to think in threes. So I would probably say our buyers today are informed, they're trusted, and they're distracted. And let me kind of elaborate on the three. Our buyers tend to, in many cases, know more about our products sometimes than our frontline sales makers. They're doing a lot of research on the products, the competitors. They're looking into satisfaction rates. They have all of this data kind of at their fingertips. And these buyers are really very well respected people within the company. They're trusted. They're usually successful managers that have a significant amount of experience in making, really, in many instances, multi-million-dollar deals. And so we have to be aware of all of the significance and all of the knowledge that our buyers have today, in which they haven't really had this much information if you look at them, historically. And then third, they're distracted. So there are many more competitors out there that are using technology to reach out to these customers, and there's a lot of noise, and they're hitting them across multiple mediums, whether it's phone or email and things like that. So being able to kind of filter through all of this data and coming up with the best solution is a big responsibility that these buyers are facing.
That's really, really interesting, Erik, that you should highlight the sophisticated nature of the B2B buyer. Um, I think that's realization number one. You know, when we start talking about personas and, people that salespeople need to address, first thing you need to realize is that this is a sophisticated, highly well-equipped individual that you're dealing with, right? So,
Yeah.
You come from a very, very, one of the leading edge sales organizations. Is that something that you see in your salespeople, in your sales teams? Is that a recognition that this is a very sophisticated buyer that's going to be very well informed? Is this something that's fully realized and accepted by your sales teams? Or do you guys have to work consistently to kind of reinforce that message?
That's a great question. So I think the short answer is the best sales makers on the team understand this, and the sales makers that are not kind of adapting and learning, they're finding it out pretty quickly. So they move from a always be closing mentality to a always be learning mentality, because we want to make sure that we're in a position to know our products, know about our customers. So when we're having a conversation with the buyer, we have the ability to really be credible and gain that trust.
Lovely. Okay. Excellent. I think, Lois, yeah, go ahead.
Of course. And so on that note, you talked about how adaptation is now key, and that these salespeople have to kind of switch the mindset from always be learning and closing, or instead of always closing, now you're switching to always learning. So can you elaborate more how you've noticed that B2B sales in general have changed?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I can remember when I first started at Dell, and I would get a list of hundreds of leads, and marketing teams would come together and they would do some analytics, and they would say, hey, here's a list, go reach out to these customers. And I think that my success rates, when I look back, my success rates were really low. And I think that in many instances, a lot of the sales makers at the time wouldn't necessarily have a lot of confidence in those leads. And so they wouldn't probably go down and go through them as much. Today, we have so much data at our fingertips. We've got mountains of data, and it's both internal and external. And in many instances, our sellers are kind of in a self-serve mentality, to where they'll go and they'll look through this data and harvest it and begin to put together strategies to contact customers. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because you've got so much information and there's so many different angles that you can say, hey, look, maybe I can add some value here to this customer, or maybe they might be interested in that. But, the bad thing is that we've got a lot of data. In order to comb through that data and find relevant topics and things, it takes time. And our customers, if you look at our customers, the time in which you can, be in front of them and be relevant, it's very accelerated. Everything is accelerating in today's environment. And so, how fast you can learn about your product, how fast you can get in front of your customers and be relevant. Our customers are generally impatient. So when they're ready to do things, they're ready to do things. And so you want to make sure that you're in the right place at the right time. And then, our customers are still very distracted though. And so we want to make sure that when we do have conversations with them, if we are in the right place at the right time, we're able to earn their trust. And the best way that we found to really earn that trust at an accelerated rate is to really show value early on in the conversations. And when we're able to show value early on and actually in essence, teach our customers about perhaps their market, a competitive threat, maybe our experience, the quicker we can establish that connection, the more they're in a listening mode as opposed to a, why are you calling me mode.
Great. I mean, that's really, really insightful, Erik. So the changing role as you describe it for the sales is driven by the fact that your customer is very sophisticated. They're extremely informed. I love the fact that you have to be, what you highlight, the impatience of the customer. They're going to be ready to buy when they're going to be ready to buy. And your sales reps and the salespeople today need to be positioned at the right time. I think what I also heard you say was that, all those different data points that you have at your fingertips have to be analyzed. And so would it be correct that now the seller is wearing two hats, one of a data analyst trying to connect all the dots, analyze that data. And the second, having to transform all this intelligence and immediately shift into being able to sell. And I bet there is a little bit of back and forth stepping that needs to happen. There must be some friction going from, first of all, getting salespeople to really start analyzing, right? And then immediately being able to take that analysis and convert it into something actionable, selling, right? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on that. What's funny is when you were kind of walking through that, I remember a few years or so ago, I was in this mode in which I was analyzing a lot of our data, and I was doing it so I could establish some accounts and customers and prospective buyers that we can go reach to go through a particular new product launch. And I was really deep in the data. And whenever you're in data, you look for connection points and you look through, what do I know about, customers? What do I know about products? What do I know about what we're trying to achieve? And a lot of it is analytics and regression and things like that. And I remember I was up against a presentation that I needed to give to our sales team. And somebody came into my office and said, "Hey, Schmude, you got to come out here and present." So I walked out, and for the first time in my life, well, maybe not the first time in my life, I really didn't have too much to say because I could not turn off the analytical side of my brain and actually start talking. So the analytics and the verbal sides, I think, are, in a way, they compete. And if you are kind of tasked, and many of our sales reps are, the best sales reps have the ability to do the analytical work and then, do the sales type activities. They have the ability to do both, but being able to transition between the two is very difficult. And I do see as well with some of my sales makers that are very analytical, they tend to over-index in the analytics, and they actually become far less successful as a sales rep because they tend to gravitate towards that. And they find out, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm really I enjoy the numbers and the marketing side. I don't want to go back over here. And so it's really interesting to see, but that's kind of what I see as it relates to that. And yes, you definitely have to wear two hats, and we see that more and more.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I picked on that. You said that, the marketing side of things, and the example you cited earlier, that when you started a number of years back, they gave you a phone book. So sales, B2B sellers are usually, the tradition has been that they're given leads to follow up. And what I hear you say now with this, kind of the analysis, connect the dots, understand what's happening in the market, this is definitely functions that were performed a little bit more upstream or outside the traditional domain of the seller. And if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is that those are things that are now, the role is actually, the salesperson's role is expanding. And for them to be, effective, they have to be much more proactive in getting the information and connecting those dots. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. And the sellers have to be, they have to take on more, really for a multitude of reasons, because there's so much more you have to understand when you're selling to customers. It's great to understand your product, but you really need to understand, especially if you're talking with your customers, you have to have credibility and understanding all of these connection points, whether it's information about their company, their competitors, the market, the industry. And you don't get that, necessarily unless you go into a multitude of places to go find this. And our sales reps, again, there's only a certain amount of time in a day and in a week, and you have to know when to stop the research phase and actually move into the selling phase as well. And so yeah, it definitely takes time, and you have to have skills and dedicate time for both.
Yeah, so just one moment before Lois, you jump in with the next question. So what you're saying is that now sellers have to do more, and there's a lot more information. And I think the subtlety in what you said, which was beautiful, I think, was that how do we transform from, going in, maybe too much analysis is paralysis, right? Is leading to paralysis. And at some point, the balance has to shift into going, you have to sell. The good old sales practice. However, the seller today needs to be able to balance and juggle a lot. They need to be able to know their client, the business, the competition, you said the product. All of that makes up the landscape within which, kind of the playground within which you kind of play, right? Or you kind of work. So that's the theater, right?
That's exactly right, Usman. And, one of the things that you hit on that is, also has me thinking is that in order to be an effective sales maker and going through some of those marketing type things and activities that used to be handled by other people, it's difficult to train people how to do that. And so there's a multitude of tools, and sometimes you have to turn on the analytical side of the brain altogether, which is a challenge. And so there's an incredible learning curve that's associated with trying to do all of those jobs. And I see some folks that just can't make that that next step, but are great sales makers. And if you can get them in the right place at the right time, they'll be in a really good position to add value for their customers. And so that's kind of the dynamics and the paradigms that that we face every day, and it's kind of transitioned over the years.
So then, Erik, on that note, I think we've established that the role of the sales individual is now very non-traditional. What would you say is the role of AI now in the sales industry, or how is AI impacting B2B sales?
Wow. Machine learning, artificial intelligence has just been incredible. So the foundational elements of AI and ML is, specifically, the ability to take vast amount of data and make sense of it and really provide value for our sales makers. And so, for me, it's things such as driving personalization, giving the sales makers insights into what makes up the buyer, like what things drive them, what are their personality insights and what posts have they made in the past that you could potentially double down on or double click into to have a connection point with the customer. I think AI makes us luckier, and I know it's an interesting term to use, but there's a colleague of mine. His name was Wayne, and he always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. And this guy, I was working bell to bell, and he would roll in late, leave early, and for some reason, Wayne would always just kill his numbers. And I finally, made a determination that the guy's just lucky. It's like, hey, he's just in the right spot at the right time. And I think AI does that for us. It's incredible to see. And let me give you an example. We had one of my sales direct sales reps got a notification that a customer basically had an acquisition, and this acquisition was fairly significant in the company, and he was notified via the xiQ engine. And so he got the notification, he got a link to the article, he read the article, he reached out to the customer. The customer that he reached out to, he took a look at some information provided by the xiQ platform, which is this AI that had an understanding of the customer's personality profile. Spoke to the customer and made a connection point really quick on the acquisition. About 6 weeks later, found an opportunity, and basically what that produced was a 1.8 million plus, probably about $3 million total opportunity for our sales maker. And it was really a great thing for the customer because they were looking for somebody to help them with with this acquisition and to bring both companies together. And so it was really putting my sales maker in the right place at the right time for this customer. And, it just made it very easy. And so that was, I was just blown away by really the ecosystem and how that all came together. So I was really excited about that. But, AI allows us, in summary, it really gives us it enables us to earn that trust quicker with our customers. It enables us to be more relevant for our customers. And it gets us in the right places at the right times.
So first of all, thanks a lot, Erik, for the great xiQ plug. So that's great. What I take away, and I find this really, really interesting, is that on the one hand, there are those traditional values and principles: establish trust, be at the right place. These are, for example, timeless and universal in nature for B2B selling. The other thing you didn't say it, but you said it, was like 6 weeks later, right? So
yep.
Point 1, injection 2, injection 3, there's big gaps. It's a long sales cycle. It's a complex sales cycle, right? So it's really, really interesting that on the one hand, what you're talking about is your basic core good selling habits augmented by data points that allow you to be at the right time, at the right place with the right information. I, Erik, like to refer to AI as augmented intelligence, exactly for the same reasons you cited, which is that too much data around there. In order to help me make sense of that data and be lucky Wayne in getting there, right? I need to be able to have somebody that actually waits, that has the patience to go through those 6 weeks, figure out what is the right time, such as the alert that your sales rep got that there's an acquisition taking place, better jump on it. They happen to be there first in line, and they got, they eventually stuck with it, and they got it. They moved it along, and you eventually got a very nice deal out of it. So again, my takeaway, Eric, and maybe you can shed some further light, is like the traditional values augmented by new technologies, right? And that is something, but what, so the role of trust, you kept using the word trust and emotion, right? So what is the role of trust and emotion? And yeah, what is the role of trust and emotion in this AI driven world, sales world, right? Still there.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's amazing that, sometimes you have the right, solution, and you've got the right product, and you can help a customer. But if you're not able to make that connection fast and be relevant quickly, you don't get the opportunity. So it's amazing. So all of these things you can have, but you want to be in a position to where you can also demonstrate that you can add value quickly to the customer, because I think our customers are much more distracted than really they've ever have been. So it's kind of an acceleration curve that we have to, as sales makers, understand. And it's not a bad thing. It really isn't. It drives efficiency in all of our conversations.
So there was a really nice thing posted on the chat, Eric. I'm going to read it.
Sure.
It says, lucky is not luck. It's an amalgamation of decades of years of human algorithms developed over many years. So it is human intelligence augmented by experience. I think that's beautifully stated, right?
I do not disagree.
Fully agree with you, Paul.
Yeah, that's a well said. To me, I can't say all those words, so I just say luck. But yeah, that was definitely very well said.
Yeah, I like the gentleman Paul coming out and kind of breaking down luck, because it could have gone as being sort of cryptic and not understood. But yes, you're absolutely right, Paul. It is an amalgamation, and that's what it is. That intelligence needs to be trained on humanly verified models. And what I loved is what Eric said is that the basic and the principles of selling are universal and timeless, ageless. And what tools like xiQ are allowing you to do is actually kind of encapsulate and move this further, quicker, and more optimally, right?
Yes.
I think our next question, Eric, I know Lois is there to ask that question, but the next question we had was regarding xiQ and how Dell has been using xiQ. You partially kind of answered that, but sorry, Lois, I'll just go ahead. And the reason I'd like to go into this, Eric, is because I think when we started our engagement with you guys, and one of the questions was, will people adopt it, right? Will they use it? And we kind of put 3 buckets down, Eric. You remember this quite some time back.
Yeah.
And what would be the 3 things that would be of value that we could simply kind of communicate to the sales team, and secondly, that would resonate with them so that they could keep coming back. And we know how your team is really, Dell team is really utilizing our product, but how they can keep coming back. So maybe shed some light on these 3 things that we kind of initially talked about from your perspective. Like, how do these earn value for you and your team, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, I was really excited about this story because, as I thought about the question that Lois recently asked, it got me fired up about this platform. And it is just, it's so eloquently put together, because it allows us to understand our customers very well. And this is a new thing for me and for many of our sales reps. So, our sales reps historically have always had a lot of data about, numbers and the market, and they didn't have a lot of data about, you know, the person that they're talking to. And maybe it's not data, but just an understanding of the way that they think, what things, you know, may not be topics that you're going to want to talk about, maybe the personality type of the buyer. These were never things that we've really thought about. And so the disc insights were really cool. I remember the first time I looked at the tool, I ran some disc insights on myself, and I was like, wow, that's pretty accurate. I ended up running it on my boss, and then I ended up running on some of the customers that I call on, and I quickly realized that, wow, this is a very, very good tool. And I shared it with them even, and they're like, wow, this is pretty amazing. It's pretty neat how it, I don't really fully understand how it works, but I do know that it's very accurate. And, but it does allow us to set kind of, before you go into a meeting, understand the mindset of your customers and the way that they think. The second thing that I like about, you know, the platform is like my sales makers, they have on average 500 companies that they're usually calling in on. And so as a services organization, we support our client sales teams, our data center sales teams, our networking sales teams, and we're basically engaged in all of our customers' opportunities. And you can't know about 500 accounts unless you have the ability to say, hey, this is one of my accounts. Go scour the internet, do whatever you need to do to collect information on the account. You know, things such as, you know, who's the leadership within the organization? Who are their competitors? What is the industry they're in? You know, what type of revenues, you know, do they make? All of these are very relevant things. And then really the third piece of that is understanding what's going on in current events. And, you know, the example that I brought up around, you know, the merger and an acquisition, you know, those are great triggers. Those are reasons to reach out to a customer. It's a reason to reach out to an internal sales team and say, hey, look, did you know that your account has had this or that? I think that, you know, we may have an opportunity to provide them some value here with this service or this product. And so you gain credibility within your organization, but also outside of the organization. You're able to establish that trust much quicker with your customers. And, you know, again, to me, it's you know, the first few sentences or the, you know, the first email is a lot of times it's make or break. And so if I can get that connection point out there sooner, it's much better. And then, you know, lastly, you know, engaging the buyers with, you know, specific relevant information is certainly important. And, you know, Usman, you hit on something as well. And that is that, look, first of all, my top sales reps use this xiQ platform every day. They open it up, they get their alerts, they act on them, and then they go about the rest of their day. So it's really kind of neat how, you know, first thing in the morning, they're engaging this. These are my best sales makers. But you still have to, and you hit on it, you still have to, there's after you're engaged the customer, you still have to do the things that you need to do. You have to understand and be knowledgeable, and you have to be engaged and listening into the, you know, what their challenges and issues. You have to be accountable and follow through on your commitments to your customer. So all of these things still have to happen, but the platform itself is incredible for us to really be relevant, not just initially, but ongoing with our customers.
Yeah, I think, thank you. One of the other things, you know, Erik, way back when we started talking to you was about, you mentioned that before, it's not just your salespeople checking and investigating their prospective buyers. It's also flipped now. The buyers are also checking on who the sellers are. And one of the aspects that we talked about using xiQ, and your team is doing it, is posting on social media. So they're getting the right domain specific information and they're posting on social media so they can project their personal brand. And I think we both agree that building the personal brand of a seller is supremely important. It's because that's the trusted part, right? Who are you? What do you know? How can you help me, right? So projecting that across is super useful as well.
Oh, absolutely, Usman. And I'm glad you brought that up because, you know, when you get relevant content that is at your fingertips and you have a network of colleagues and customers, what we do typically is, you know, we like to connect with our customers on, you know, LinkedIn if at all possible. We also like to share content via LinkedIn, good articles. As I mentioned earlier, our customers like to learn things from us too. We need to be not, you know, so we need to be good teachers, if you will. You know, today's modern sales folks need to be in a position to add value for their customers. And it's not about how well you can pitch a product, but it's what value are you bringing? And the ability to, and now I'm giving away some of our secrets, Usman. We could stop the recording now. No, just teasing. But one of the things that we really like is the ability to, now that we're connected, so connected to our customers on a different medium besides the phone, you know, LinkedIn and Twitter and things like that, the ability to share relevant content very easily is a phenomenal tool that we use to stay connected and stay relevant with our customers and demonstrate that, hey, you know what? Have you seen this before? I thought this was very applicable to you and your environment. And it's really, it makes it easy. Just a few clicks. You could put some, you know, your appropriate comments on it after you read it. And I think it's very relevant. Customers love it.
Man,
Great.
Erik,
Anytime carry on forever, but yeah, I think, yeah, go ahead.
My thoughts exactly. I'm just going to call you up and be like, all right, I need to know what your team is doing. Give me all the fluff. That's so great to hear, though. We appreciate you saying all of those things. And again, thank you so much for letting us know how you feel the buyers have changed, how AI is becoming this monumental role in B2B sales, and also some of those skill sets that buyers should carry with them into the new year and moving forward with all of these changes. So my goodness, thank you so much. We're actually going to hand it over to Manur now because she had a few questions come through during the webinar.
You're on mute, Manur.
And Manur, you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you guys, as adding on to what Lois has said. That was a very thoughtful and stimulating discussion on what to do and how to adapt to the new circumstances. We can now open for Q&A. Guys, you can use the Q&A chat box appearing on your screens to post your queries. We've received a few. Let's begin.
All right. So our first question is from Erik. Or I'm sorry, this is to Erik. You had mentioned that sales reps need to be more analytical as well as proactive. And this audience member is wondering if you can elaborate a bit.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the analytics, today we have so much data. There's a lot of data that's out there. Things such as, you know, types of customer, how much products they've bought, what is their industry that they're in, how is their industry producing, what competitors are out there, when was the last time they bought, how many support tickets do they have opened up. There's a lot of things that you can put together. And when you put together specific data points on customers, you can be more accurate in your targeting. Let me give you an example. I ran a while back, I ran a regression analysis, and this was probably 15 years or so ago. And I had 9 data points on a customer. How much products they bought, did they buy desktops, laptops, servers, what level of support they purchased, what city and state they lived in, and how old their products were. So those were roughly the items that we had on it. We then took a model in which we said, hey, look, of these, how many have machines that are expiring under warranty, in which they have X amount of support tickets open that are due for a refresh, right? So it's taken a few data points. We then took a list of hundreds of customers down to 20 or so per region, gave those 20 to the sales makers, and then they began to reach out to their customers. So that's one example. That was with 9 data points. Today, there are hundreds and in many instances, thousands of data points on customers and about customers and about your products, and our ability to kind of connect those dots and help our customers with some of the challenges that they may be facing. It gives us the ability to be in front of them at the right time with relevant information. And so that's what I mean by, taking analytics and data points and making these connections prior to reaching out to our customers and to our buyers.
Okay, thank you. And then Usman, we'll have you take this next one from Anderson. He is asking, what is the role of empathy in B2B selling?
Yeah, I'd actually like to defer that across to Erik. He's the main man over here, and I think he has a lot of. So that's a great question. Again, one of those traditional values that we talk about, Erik. Or maybe what is the role of empathy?
Well, I think first and foremost, the role of empathy in everyday life is really gained tremendous momentum, and rightfully so. The ability to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody else and understand the challenges and the things that they face allow us to be as effective as possible. Customers don't want you to call them up and pitch something to them. Those days are done. Customers want you to be empathetic. They want you to understand what they're going through, the challenges that they face on a daily basis. And these things are hard to pick up on unless you say, hey, look, let me take that step. Let me live a day in the life of this person. And in order to do that, you have to listen and you have to really understand your potential buyer or your customer. And so I think it's a great question. There's certainly, I would say that, if I look, just at DELL and a lot of our training that we're doing internally, we're specifically focusing on, hey, how can we be better, more empathetic sales makers? Because it's a very, very important thing. And really it's crucial.
Gosh, absolutely. That was such a great answer. I mean, it was a great question, but thank you for all those insights. I think we have time for one more question. So Erik will again bring this to you, since as Usman said, you're the man of the hour. Peter would like to know, with this virtual selling landscape, do you foresee salespeople traveling and meeting in person again?
So that's also, I love the question. So I think, first of all, what we've seen at DELL is we've seen customers that have really invested in enabling video conferencing and more distance type selling. I think that's there. It's going to continue to be there. I think that investment is, it's very good. The short answer is I do believe that we're probably not going to go back to the way things were either, but we're going to be somewhere in between. I think that there's still ultimately very important things that can be achieved via face-to-face. But, you know, selling in a virtual world, I believe is definitely here to stay. And yeah, I can give you an example really quick of my son, and he's a gamer, and he also, you know, watches a lot of YouTube and stuff like that. And I walked into his room, this was a couple of years or so ago, and I said, "Hey, Matthew, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I need you, go outside, hang out with your friends." And he's got his headphones on, and he lifts one ear off and he says, "Dad, I am hanging out with my friends." Puts it back on and gets back on the computer. And at that moment in time, I realized, I'm like, wow, things are changing a little bit. So I love the question, and the enablement of this infrastructure is there. We've got connectivity. You're going to see with 5G, that's even, you know, more significant. The video quality hopefully is not too bad, but I definitely see that. And by the way, you know, since this pandemic began, we've been busier than we ever have been. And it's been really incredible to see the amount of productivity and the way in which we're conducting business has really taken off, you know, to a degree. So I'm excited about what the future has to offer here. And I do believe that, you know, selling in a virtual world is real, and it will continue to, you know, stay.
Beautiful. Great answer. Love the example of your son saying, "I'm already hanging out." You know, it's kind of funny. I have probably children slightly older than your children. And, but, you know, it's kind of funny. We've always kind of looked at that. We frowned on it, right? Our generation frowns on it, and the next generation accepts it. You know, that's their normal, right? For us, it's an alien thing. And it's very interesting that whole experience, the gamification as well. You know, we're talking to you guys about the sales readiness index and being able to assign different badges to individuals based on their preparedness. So that gamification that your son is experiencing, and the fact that he's doing virtual hangouts, that's our new reality today.
That's true.
Amazing.
All right.
Which isn't too bad. I did run into a little traffic jam in the kitchen on the way here to my computer, but it's not too bad at all.
Excellent. Lois, please.
All right, guys, I hate to break this up. It was a very exciting discussion, but we're out of time for today. So thank you, guys. That's all the time we have for questions for today. And I'd like to bring the session to a close with that. You will receive a recording of the session in your mailboxes within the day. And if you want to learn more, you can reach out to our sales and marketing strategists by scheduling a free consultation on our website, xiqinc.com. And we'll help you bolster your sales and marketing for 2021. All right, folks, that's it for today. Have a good rest of the day, and we'll be in touch.